the scary figures that you just showed just now. And I think a lot of us have read about this in great details before we came here, I think, including me. But the real question is, I mean, PRU 14 is coming up in what, 3 or 4 years' time. And, you know, I mean, if this issue goes big, this could be the one that topple up the government, for whatever reasons that they're having right now. My real question is, since the agreement is already there, the bonds have already signed out, the agreement has already been signed, and the not guaranteed letter is a guaranteed letter. What are actually the plans of Pakatan Rakyat if they would take the seats, take over the office in the PRU 14 to overcome this? And of course, once you are in the government, you are the government then. So what are actually your solutions if, let's say, you know, God willing that you're going to win in PRU 14?
My name is Michael Long. I have a short question. My concern is, what is the impact to the average Malaysian, assuming in the worst case scenario, the $42 billion is lost?
My question is about whether foreign rating agencies are looking at 1MDB, because clearly they don't care what Malaysia seems to think about it, but do they care about what the foreigners are doing, and will it impact our credit rating?
We bring this to international justice because I agree with Tony Plua. This is a mother of mother of mother of mother. I agree with Tony.
The most difficult questions, what are the plans by Pakatan Rakyat to resolve? Yeah, I look grim now suddenly, you know, not as happy. Okay, I think it has to begin now. As much as I've briefly touched in my short speech just now, is that as much as this is disgusting to us, it annoys us, but it is actually in the best interest of the public for the time being to make sure that it doesn't fail. Okay. So there are two things that we need to do, and that's why the activism and the public pressure is important. Because if there is one thing that we have learned in the last 6-7 years, nothing moves Barisan Nasional but public anger. Only public anger will make them act or remedy something. So there are two things of immediate imperative now. Number one, we have to make sure that whatever we don't know about 1MDB has to come out in the open, as transparent as possible, because we need to we need to stop it in its track. Whatever that we can stop, any new debt issues, any new shoddy deals, any new, God knows, Hollywood film or whatever, this has to be stopped now to limit the exposure. That's number one. Number two, then we have to make sure that whatever that can be undone, at least if we were to win in 2-3 years' time, you know, those are the ones that you focus to make sure that whatever left of 1MDB by then can be restructured, and at least it is a reasonable business. It's not a uranium or coal Mongolian mines, for example, so that at least there's a cash revenue generating operations in 1MDB that will be able to support the debt obligation. I mean, the long and short of it, that is something that has to happen. That's why you have to keep banging and we have to keep pressuring so that more will come, and as more will come, then you can start managing the risk. The problem is, in the first 4 years, in between 2009 and 2013, because everything was so hidden and it was so, you know, black box to us, it has come to this extent of 42 billion. That cannot happen for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think what Pakatan can do now, and we are trying our best, is to limit the exposure and to make sure that remedy begins today, so that the likelihood that a catastrophic failure is minimized. If, for example, it doesn't work, and then there is every chance that it will not work, there will be some failure to it. Of course, I suppose the government has no choice but to restructure. Of course, we can issue debts It's just issue new debts and we have to service those debts and so on. You have to asset strip and see whatever you can get. But definitely the public will suffer because there'll be at least a few billions lost in the way on top of whatever is lost already. So I think we have to make sure that you minimize the risk, minimize the exposure, and if hopefully in the unfortunate likelihood that it comes to that 3 or 4 years down the line, then we definitely have to restructure. By restructuring, meaning that you can always extend the bond maturity. You know, if you look at the maturity 10, 15 years notes, you may have to extend. You can always go back to the market because definitely that kind of coupon rate is very bad. Sometimes organizations or governments will reissue at a much cheaper, in a better condition, less corrupt way, and therefore you can refinance the whole thing cheaply. You know, that's the best that you could do. And I think, in spite, put aside all the political rhetorics, it may happen to that. You know. 1 MDB on its own may not bankrupt Malaysia. I don't think it will really drag us to the point of Greece. However, and I've been talking about PTPTN loan for a very long time, you know. We have another ticking bomb, which is PTPTN. And it's growing astronomically, and it's just the collection rate just will not be able to pay for it. The reason, for example, as long as 3-4 years ago we were talking about we need to do something about PTPTN, it's not just about political rhetorics, it is because you need to restructure PTPTN loan. It will grow into 100 billions by 2020, 2022. And those loans, 100 billion of it actually come from our money, EPF and so on. That's PTPTN. There will be also government loans. Now it's about 560 billion. It will, at the rate that government is going, is about additional 100 billion per year. So by the time we go into power, hopefully 2018, we should be expecting about 800 billion debts inherited, you know, from Barisan Nasional. And all this money, because of our financing law in the country, most of the money, or if not, I mean, the majority of the loans has to be Malaysian domestic loan, which means that a lot of it is actually being financed by EPF, and so it's the same money going around, you know. Now, my concern is that, hence why I say it's a question of a run on our economy and a run on the government's capability to service its commitment. Because 1 MDB on its own may not be that dangerous, but 1 MDB may trigger a run that then everyone start demanding. You know, it's like a run on a bank. When people start thinking that the bank does not have the money, people start going and withdrawing everything at the same time. Then we have trouble. With all these debts and with all these loans, you know, if creditors begin to lose confidence, and that comes with credit rating and so on, if the creditors begin to lose confidence, it will affect your current financial commitment and also your ability to continue to raise debts for the future commitments. It's going to be more expensive and so on. Okay, that is a big problem. That may trigger the kind of problem that Argentina had, maybe not to the extreme of Greece, but there have been countries in the past in a similar situation like Malaysia where they have to go back to the creditors and renegotiate. When you go and renegotiate with creditors in a situation where you are unable to meet your commitment, they will agree for extension and so on, but at a much higher price. And when that happens, it will be at the public's expense. No schools, less developmental, basically pay cuts, and all these things. And the public will suffer ultimately. And I think that more or less answers Michael's question. What is the average impact on the Malaysian? You know, when a run on the government's ability to service our loans begin, then there will be cutbacks. And you see how it's in Greece, in Spain, in all other countries. Once there is austerity measure, it's going to be a cyclical spiral for our economy. We don't invest enough, the government is not able to inject, because of that, the economy continues to grow or not grow at all, and because of that, it will get worse and worse and worse. So the public has to pay by losing whatever services or financial benefits that we get from the country so far. Very quickly, what's the money being used? My opinion. My opinion, I think they have always treated it as a kiddie bank. You know, the idea was some of these rich kids, all these clever guys, all in their MBAs and so on, went to Rosmah and say, hey, if we have 5 billion, we can do so many things and we can get a rate of return of 13-14%. So there's venture A, venture B, venture 3, venture 4, buy Reebok, finance Hollywood, whatever lah. Okay, you know. Of course, the idea was this money will get the desired return. The public doesn't have to know, because by nature of 1MDB as a sovereign fund, so long as it continues to give the right return, it's fine. That's the idea, because that's how financial markets supposedly work. That's how wealth advisors and fund managers work. You know, the clients doesn't want to know what you do so long as I get my required returns. Unfortunately, they went and perhaps I was told that one of the big hole was that they did try to buy the Mongolian mines and it didn't work out, you know. There was speculation that some huge money was invested in foreign market and there was a loss, yen against yen, in the early 2010-2011. So basically they had a large sum, which they tried everything because they had the money, they could do it. And if you have 5 ventures, 4 works out, 1 is a loss, that's fine. You will still get the return. But if you have 5 ventures, 6 ventures fail, then you are in trouble. And I think that's what happened. The credit rating, I think the whole focus is on Malaysia now, because it's a question of everything happens at the same time as I explained. You know, we have a very high, very close to debt ceiling, so almost 55%. Our deficit problem has not improved, and of course Najib is not seen to be leading. Our economy is stuck, that's basically quite blurry. So I think in the same way that usually credit rating may not be too concerned about all these issues previously, when you put everything together at the same time and the interaction of all these risks together presents a big risk. And that's why there has always been, for the last few years, a pressure on Najib to reduce the deficit. And that's why hence all the GST and so on. When you bring 1MDB and as more information comes out, it certainly will have an impact on our credit rating, I think. You know, and that will complicate matters worse, because for a government that borrows 100 billion a year, when there is, say, 50 percentage points increase, that will be a lot of money that they have to set aside to service debts every year. As it is now, Malaysian government already spent about 24 billion a year just to service its debts. It's not repayment lah, it's to service debt, 24 billion. I don't think you can take actions against Goldman Sachs, because I think it is legal. It's just very, very bad deal to the public, that's all. It's a very good deal to Goldman Sachs and 1MDB and the gang. It's just bad deal for us. And I don't think you can take any legal action. And finally, likewise, I don't think you can bring this to international justice or courts. And I think, for our satisfaction, I think we should punish them here, not in New York or London. And the best way to punish them is put them out from election. And we definitely will send Najib to look after a Mongolian coal mine.